Thank you, Trisha, fellow panelists, Professor Azmi Sharum, Comrade, Mr. Bon, Mr. Lim, Kitsiang, Tony Poa is also here. I think it is significant for us also to make mention of Teoli Lan, who is also here with us today. After 3 years, she has been fighting. And I think she inspires us all. It is not easy, but we find that the fire does not burn out in her. And I think that is what we have to acknowledge, and I think we have to give her a support. We speak, ladies and gentlemen, friends, about transitional justice. And that's, 2 words, very explosive. And most of us here don't know what it means. I think the short of it is this: how do we bring about change? Now, I'm going to address this from 2 perspectives, but of course there's going to be an overlapping. One is from the perspective of a lawyer, and the other is from the perspective of an MP. As a lawyer, I involve myself in the criminal justice system because I appear in court. And what do you see? In particular, when you deal with criminal trials, you ask yourself that one simple question: how strong is the individual Malaysian as compared to the might of the state? How strong are you individually as compared to the might of the police force? What do you do when you are alone up against all of them? These are the questions that we ask because we have been through it ourselves. When you are among comrades, when you are among friends, when you are among people who share the same desire with you, when you are among activists, when you appear in a crowd, when you chant for change, you get the support, you feel the support, you feel the inspiration. But does that translate into reality when you are alone in that room with the police officer, facing the brunt of it all? Why do the police officers do what they do? Why do they behave the way they behave? You don't have to go far. I'm sure most of you here will say there's no need for all that by the police. But why do they do it? And I'm sure some of you here will have also seen them. When you look into their eyes, you see it's beyond just crowd control. It's almost as if they have something to prove, something to show. But ultimately, that's what it is. It all boils down to that. It all boils down to how it is we control them. As a lawyer, that's how you look at things, because you look at the whole system and you know you're fighting it. The only chance you have is to convince a judge. Sometimes we see that happening and we get our way. That's good. But in Parliament, you see it from a different perspective. In Parliament, you realize how powerful the government is. And if the government actually had the will to bring about change, it can. It can. But of course, it's always about rhetoric, it's always about speeches, it's always about promises, it's always about guarantees, which we never see. The government cannot expect us individuals to make the change on the streets, in the police station. So what does it come down to? It comes down to us understanding what we work with. The institutions that exist, ladies and gentlemen. If you are arrested, there is an offense for which you are suspected. You are brought to the police station. There's almost always the accusation of police brutality. Every single time someone comes out, he says, yes, I have been subjected to it. You and I know the law says the police can't do it, but they do it. Yeah, they do it. They still do it. To them, it's simple. If we don't do it, we are not going to get answers. And if we don't get answers, we can't solve the crime. So we have to do it. And you find that there is this crisis of complacency among those who are in charge. Because what happens is they know it's happening. But ultimately nothing is done to stop it. It is only when somebody dies. It's only when somebody is seriously injured. It's only when it becomes a national issue that there is outcry and that there is call for change. We all know those people who hold high office in the police force, in the MACC, in other investigative bodies, they know what happens. But they are not prepared to do anything to bring about the change. They are not prepared to acknowledge that this is a problem. They are not prepared to look us straight in the eye and say that, look, we can deal with the problem without having to resort to this violence, thuggery and brutality. In short, the senior politician like Mr. Lim would say, they are not prepared to say to us that they can use their minds to solve the problem rather than their fists. So as lawyers, we bring these complaints to court. Individual cases we solve. But what about the general problem? How do you deal with it? So you go back to Parliament. You go back to Parliament, you raise the issue. And of course, they in Parliament, the government, they will say, yes, we agree, it should never happen. You can look at all the video recordings of especially Nazri's speech. In fact, I would have been really happy if he was here tonight. Perhaps he could also express his views on this. But what change have you seen? In the last 3 years, after an inquest, after an RCI, what change have you seen? So you come back to what I was saying earlier. You know it's happening, it has happened, there has been outcry, but as usual, everybody comes back to a point where they ask themselves the question, what has been done? I think we have to get to the root of it. If we want to bring about change, we have to change the entire system. First, we have to understand that if we do not get our message through to those who lead these agencies, then nothing will change. For example, shouldn't it be the reverse? Where if somebody is arrested and he is brutalized in custody, shouldn't it be the reverse, where the police immediately take action? They come out, arrest the person that is suspected of having done it, investigate the police officer who is alleged to have done it, and bring him back. Do you notice that it always takes us, it's almost as though we, the public, have to beg for justice in cases like this. Look at the case of Beng Hock. Until today, we have had an inquest. It went on for nearly a year, in fact more than a year. You put the family through that, and ultimately you say, all right, no action. You have an RCI. In the RCI, days and days of questioning effort. You have even the RCI saying it. You don't have to go far, they say it. Something wrong. These people have committed criminal acts. And yet there is no action. Yet nothing happens. And we, the members of the public, are just supposed to accept that and say, okay, never mind. Not only this RCI, the Lingam RCI also. Also recommendation, no action. It goes back to the government. What does the government have to say about it? It's because of the AG. They say we have sent the file to the AG. The AG is the one that is supposed to decide. The AG comes back. AG says, oh no, no action. Government keeps quiet. Because we pressurize them somehow, they say, okay, we'll take disciplinary action. I'll ask you a simple question. If there is cause to take disciplinary action, then isn't there also cause to take action in terms of criminal law, as already suggested by the RCI? So again, what does it boil down to? It boils down to commitment on part of that person who is given the power to act. And in these circumstances, it is two bodies. One, the AG chambers, and the other, the government. You need to change their mindsets. With due respect to the current AG that we have, I think all of us have read enough. Yeah? You don't even have to talk about it, it'll go on for hours. Allegations after allegations after allegations. You read, nothing happens. You raise it in parliament, nothing happens. So the point is, when we talk about change in the system, I think what you need to do is you need to have a system where you can see independence. Complete independence in authorities like the AG Chambers, where the AG is prepared to say, look, I do not represent any political party. I represent the people of Malaysia, and it is my duty to ensure that if there is any injustice, then we see that it is corrected and justice is done. Now, if this does not happen, I'm afraid to say, I do not think anything will change in this country. I think as the years go by, we will see more complaints, because nowadays you have got the means to, the media is different, it's a lot broader, it's bigger, it's faster. You will hear a lot more complaints. But as usual, they'll put it through the usual, the inquests and the RCIs and all that, and they hope after it's on, then people forget about it. We are now in the process of preparing the civil suit for Beng Hock, which should be filed tomorrow or the after. Yeah? That's the last mode of attack we have. So what's going to happen there? So again, as I said earlier, the change, if you want to see change, the real change, first and foremost, you've got to decentralize. As I said, I've written about this before as well. Decentralize the powers of the AG. Don't give all the power to one man. Make sure there is another body that can decide whether or not the AG's decisions are correct. When you do that, then the AG knows that at the end of the day, he cannot get away with it. If he does not do what he is required to do, then there is a committee which will tell him that it is wrong and will direct him to do what he has to do. That is one. Number two, make officers in these departments liable for whatever it is that happens to people who are in the care of their officers. Make them liable. The IGP should take responsibility. The commissioner, as far as SPRM, they should take responsibility. And why is Dato' Kasim telling us, yes, we're going to take disciplinary action? Action should be taken against him as well. Because when you do that, then they realize that it is something that they cannot just push away from them. Customs, immigration, these problems happen there as well. And ultimately what you need to do is to ensure that you have a government which is prepared to take action. No point talking. You know, if you want to start talking about things that have happened and no action in our government, I think, you know, this will be a different, tangent altogether. But you and I know what happens. A government which does not want to take action, you can see the Prime Minister who says, I will leave no stone unturned. Who says, okay, I will have RCI. But when the RCI comes up with recommendations, doesn't do anything about it. But until today, still, he's prepared to walk around straight-faced, saying that insofar as I'm concerned, I have done my part. So why has our country come to this level? Why is it that despite all of us knowing that something is so tragically wrong with the system, yet none of us can do anything to change it? All of us still have to watch and hope that tomorrow it's not one of us that becomes a center of attraction for the wrong reasons. So, ultimately, the question is this. You talk about transitional justice. You talk about any type of justice. If you do not have people in the system who are prepared to make sure that justice is done, there is going to be no change. So that is the reason why, at the end of the day, we can claim that we have succeeded to a great extent. Because I think before this process takes place, it usually involves an uprising among the people. Cases like this, unfortunately, cases like this will always be remembered. Cases like this will always become the starting point for which people will think. Now what is important here is to remember that we as the people, we as the rakyat, we also have a duty. We must not forget the victims. We must not forget that it is our responsibility to carry on the fight. And we must make sure that we bring about this change. Because if we do not keep up that fight, I say that I do not think you will ever see these changes coming. Thank you very much.